Well, let's see what's in the box. Oh, God. Wow, she really went all out this year. Isn't love grand? Happy Valentine's Day. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. And I want to wish everybody out there a happy Valentine's Day to celebrate this little holiday. I know some people don't like celebrating, like my buddy Rich. It's not my favorite holiday either, but there are some cool horror films out there that have to do with the holiday. We're going to discuss one right now. Before we get into it though, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here, great, would appreciate that. And also before we begin, I just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in to my first ever live stream on Friday night. And a very special thank you to Dale_A from the Bat and Spider podcast. Once again, I implore you to please go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and subscribe to their podcast and give them a 5-star review because they deserve it, because those guys are great. Dale and Chuck do a great job, and they release one podcast every Thursday morning. And can't say enough good things about those gentlemen. But we're going to talk a little bit further about Valentine. I know we did a deep dive on Friday night, but I want to review this one and get it on the record on my YouTube page. So we're going to get into this right now. Valentine got released February 2nd of 2001. It's rated R. Had a budget of $10 million. I know online you'll say it says 30, but Jamie Blanks, through different interviews, has said it was a $10 million budget. There was no way Warner Brothers would give us $30 million to make an 80s style slasher film. It grossed $20 million in America and 36 worldwide. This was Jamie Blanks' second American film. His first was Urban Legend in '98. I really liked that film. His goal, though, was to direct I Know What You Did Last Summer. He actually directed a trailer for I Know What You Did Last Summer, a fake trailer to try to get that job, but they'd already hired Jim Gillespie to do that. And he got Urban Legend based off of that trailer. And then this was his second film. And after this, he went back to Australia to do Storm Warning, Long Weekend. And I think he still produces and he scores stuff. But yeah, he's active on Twitter. You can follow him on Twitter, Jamie Blank. Seems like a really nice guy. And he loves horror. So yeah, in the cast-wise, we got Denise Richards, who was hot at this time as Paige. She was coming off of Starship Troopers in '97, Wild Things in '98, The World Is Not Enough in '99. So she was hot at the time. David Boreanaz was hot. He was on Angel at the time. And he plays Adam Carr. Marley Shelton is in this film as Kate. She is our main final girl. Jessica Capshaw plays Dorothy. And she is Steven Spielberg's stepdaughter. Katherine Heigl in this film is Shelley. And she only had 3 days to shoot her role or her scenes because she was on Roswell at the time. So a lot of these folks were busy. David Boreanaz only had 2 weeks. I know we discussed that on Friday, but he had 2 weeks to film his role, and that was all he had because he wanted to do extra stuff for the film. They just didn't have the time. And Valentine, we went into over Friday, so just quick plot synopsis. At the beginning of the film, we see Jeremy Milton at this Valentine's Day dance in 6th grade, and he's asking the different girls to dance with him that are in this film. And the only one that's really nice to him is Kate. She goes, maybe later, Jeremy, maybe later. But Paige is not nice to him, and Shelley's not nice to him. And then finally, Dorothy says, yes, kind of. They go under the bleachers, they're making out. Well, some of the boys see them. They make fun of Jeremy, beat the shit out of him, pour punch on him. We see his nose is bleeding, which will come back later. And then we fast forward some years until all these ladies are in their mid-20s. And we get that great scene at the beginning in the morgue. Introduces our killer, introduces Shelley, Katherine Heigl's character, although she doesn't last very long. And then we're on to our main story. And we went over this on Friday. This masked killer with a Cupid mask on, black overcoat, gloves, and a butcher knife, although he does use different implementations throughout the film, starts stalking and killing, and sending some nasty Valentine's Day cards to our leads here until finally the finale is at this big party at Dorothy's house, and the killer systematically kills one by one Paige and whatnot until we have our final confrontation between Kate and the killer, who she thinks is Adam, but then we find they shoot and kill the killer. We take the mask off and it's actually Dorothy, and we get that last great shot of Adam, Kate embracing, and we see the blood dripping on her face. The camera pans back and his nose is bleeding, and that's the end of Valentine. What to like about this film? Well, I like the killer's outfit. I've always liked it. I think the movie is pretty well shot. I think Jamie Blanks does a nice job with the directing. He was messed with throughout the production. We'll talk about that in a minute. I think the cast is pretty good here. I think they work pretty well. I mean, no one's going to say Denise Richards is a great actress, but I think in this role, she was made for a role like this, and in Wild Things and that, she's really good here. The rest of the cast is pretty damn good. I like the setup of this boy that was bullied. I mean, we've seen it before in 80s slasher films, but this kid that was bullied and then he comes back. Although there are red herrings thrown at us left and right. But spoiler alert, at the end, Adam is really the killer, but he gets away with it, which is kind of like, I said this on Friday, a Revenge of the Nerds, and a nerd actually wins, although in an awful way by killing people, but he wins at the end. He gets the girl of his dreams, and he doesn't get caught because everybody thinks it's Dorothy. There was going to be a sequel. They never got around to filming it. Again, I like the way it's shot. I like the soundtrack. This movie, we didn't get to talk about this on Friday. We were going to, and I totally forgot. It's my fault. This movie had a really kick-ass soundtrack for at the time. If you remember around that time, like Scream 3 had a soundtrack, The Faculty had a soundtrack. All these movies had a soundtrack. I know we did last summer had a soundtrack. I own that soundtrack. I own all these soundtracks. But this one had a really good soundtrack. I mean, you got Rob Zombie on there. You got Deftones on there. You got Orgy on there. Bands that were big at the time. Marilyn Manson and Disturbed and other bands. Static X is on that soundtrack. And it's played throughout the film. You can hear the music. So it has a really kick-ass soundtrack. I like all those bands. I have all those songs in my collection somewhere. I got a bunch of CDs. But I've always liked this film. It's a film that kind of got overlooked. Now, obviously, when we talk about Valentine's Day horror, the gold standard really is My Bloody Valentine from the 80s. I love that film. It's a really great slasher film with some great gore effects, especially the uncut version. I love that one, and even My Bloody Valentine 3D. This one kind of got lost in the shuffle. It kind of came and went. It made a little bit of money. But I've always enjoyed it. I saw it opening weekend with she was a girlfriend at the time, but I ended up marrying her. My wife went with me back then to see this film, and I've always enjoyed it. I like the killer's mask. I like the setup. Is it perfect? No, and all the guys in the movie are pretty much scumbags except for Adam. David Boreanaz's character is the only nice guy, decent guy in this whole movie. The rest of the guys are pretty shitty, honestly. But most of the girls aren't the greatest. I mean, even as adults, Kate's really the only super down-to-earth nice one out of the group. The rest of them, even though they're not quite as nasty as they were back when they showed that Valentine's Day dance, they're still full of themselves and that. So Kate's really the only good person in Adam. But I like the chemistry here between the actors, and there's a couple really cool kills. Unfortunately, they cut down on the gore. They actually got their rated R, and Village Roadshow and Warner Brothers actually asked Jamie Blanks to go back and cut more violence out, even though they already got the R rating, which I found that very bizarre why you would do that, especially when the director, Jamie Blanks, says, I was very upfront, I want to make an 80s style slasher film. Why would you have them cut more violence out if you already procured the R rating? That makes no sense to me, and reading that kind of pisses me off. I wish you could see the cut footage. I believe some of it's on that Blu-ray, but you could also find it on YouTube if you want to watch it for free. Just go Valentine 2001 cut scenes, and it'll show some of the gore scenes that were cut out. It's not the greatest it's not a great transfer, but you can watch and get the idea of what the scene would have looked like if they would have left it in. Overall, I really like this film. I think it's a really solid slasher film, and at the time, it was kind of going against that meta slasher stuff that was going on. It was so big because of Scream, and I love the Scream franchise. But a lot of films were doing the same thing, even Urban Legend. So this was kind of a throwback to the 80s, and for whatever reason, I remember some of the marketing. I don't think they marketed it all that great, but it kind of came and went. But now we have that great Blu-ray from Scream Factory. I'm sure it'll give us a 4K eventually. It's not available on Amazon right now. So if you are interested in buying it, but although I do believe Cablasto said on the stream on Friday that it is streaming on Tubi, and it's a free app. If you want to watch that film, you can. At the end of the day, I like this film. I would give it an 8 out of 10. It's a really solid R-rated horror film, and I wish Jamie Blanks would come back to the U.S. and make some more horror films. I think he had a nice eye for horror, and I know he's a fan of it. But yeah, at the end of the day, 8 out of 10 for that movie. What are your thoughts on it? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Join me here. I greatly would appreciate that. I'm also going to be looking into doing more live streams, maybe once a month. Might do some more with Dale. We've talked about it. We'll see. I know he's not going to be available to do it once a month all the time, and I might do some on my own. We'll see, and maybe collab with some other folks. But yeah, until next time, bye.